Arizona, Colorado, Indiana, Michigan, New Jersey, Tennessee, and Virginia. Listen up. WynnBET is now live in all these states, and the excitement of Wynn Las Vegas has finally landed in online sports betting and casino play. From boosted parlays to live in-game offs on every major sport, WynnBET gives you the tools to win. Sign up today for your risk-free $1,000 sports bet. Download the WynnBET app now or visit wynnbet.com to start winning.
You're listening to the Huddle Up Podcast with Chad Jensen and Zack Kelberman. Join Broncos Country's deep divers at milehighhuddle.com and sound off. And now it's time to drop some knowledge.
And welcome in, everybody, to our Facebook groups, to our YouTube groups, Twitch, and Twitter. This is the Mile High Huddle Podcast. I am your host, Scott Kennedy. Do not adjust your set. I do have hair, so it is not Chad Jensen tonight. It is me, guest hosting.
Shots fired.
He knows. He embraces it. He's bald and beautiful.
Right off the bat.
I'm afraid of what happened if I'd shaved my head. Ugh. So, but this is Zack Kelberman on this side over here. So if that's messing you up just a little bit, because usually on this side we apologize. But Zack and I, we do this about once a month or so, and we're probably going to be with you all week. So with Chad taking some well-deserved time off, and we've got a lot to talk about tonight. Zack, how are you doing, my friend?
I'm a little exhausted from this week, Scott. I love it. It's a good kind of exhaustion, but exhaustion nonetheless. Russell Wilson becoming official, having his presser, the Broncos signing Randy Gregory, and that controversy with Dallas, the players they've added, the rumors. And now I see, it's a little aside here, Scott, but I see on Twitter, Sua Craven's former Broncos safety unloaded on Vic Fangio on Twitter. I tweeted
that must have hurt your feelings. I'm sure you jumped right to his defense.
I was so sad for Vic, I can't even tell you. But I learned today, though, Scott, that Vic Fangio disliked a Broncos player not named Drew Lock. Apparently, it was a widespread issue in the Denver locker room, and it just makes me feel better about Nathaniel Hackett. I couldn't be happier that Vic is gone, honestly.
All right. Now, Sua Cravens, that surprises me. I covered Sua Cravens when he was in high school. He was out in California when I was out in California. And this is one of the smartest, most well-spoken leadership, just marry my daughter type of kids. I don't know if he went off the rails and he's been, eating paint chips and living under power lines or something since then. But to hear that it's him saying something, that carries a little weight with me.
I love it. Yeah, he's super articulate, super well-spoken, at least the way he tweets, and he's letting it all out there. And he even said, and this is just a quick aside before we get into it, He goes, I know my career is over, but the BS, I won't stand for that. And he just aired Vic Fangio out, and he said Justin Simmons will co-sign. Chris Harris Jr. already co-signed what Sua Cravens is saying. So I think it can be confirmed now definitively that it was a toxic locker room under Vic Fangio, and just the breath of fresh air Nathaniel Hackett must be for those players.
It wasn't hard to see. I mean, like I said, just coming from the outside in, and this was my first year really watching the Broncos. After, it started off nice 3-0, but, those were teams that the Broncos roster, they should beat. And then watching them lose and then lose again. So it was by like the sixth game of the week where I said, this team's done. I think you guys remember me saying that, the phrase dead man walking right away. I'm like, this is Vic Fangio. Yep. He's gone. Week 6 is when I was like, and I'd always said I was a little surprised that he was brought back to begin with. But by week 6, that team had already punted on Vic Fangio. And you know what? Times have changed. And we were talking just a little bit before we went on. It's like, how do you want to open this thing? I'm like, well, listen, it has been such a crazy few days that Russell Wilson seems like he's been a Bronco for at least a month, 2 months. It's been like 12 days. And he was just introduced 3 or 4 days ago. That's how long the news cycle has changed us, that it's just been a whirlwind. We're going to get into a bunch of that tonight. First off, let's hit Christian here.
Enough of Vic Fangio. Yeah, we got Christian De Jesus hopping in with a $5 super. Thank you so much, Christian. Good to see you. Hope you had a great weekend. Christian asks, Scott, do you think we should prioritize someone like Daniel fa la 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 in the draft now? And yeah, regardless, I'll kick it over to you in a second, Scott. Regardless of who they target, right tackle, the offensive line has to be a priority. They did not sign Lyle Collins, despite me tweeting about it every single day and literally praying for it.
Didn't work.
Didn't happen. He went to the Bengals, and respect to the Bengals for fortifying that line around Joe Burrow, but that's what I want the Broncos to do. They have to protect Russell Wilson at all costs. So whether it's Falalele or whether it's Penning or anyone in the draft, they have to make that a priority from pick 64 until they don't pick anymore.
I think you've got a chance that Falalele might be there. A chance. While we're doing this, let's bring up some video on him. This is I titled this one in a way I had a feeling it might go pretty big on YouTube. It did. 400-pound monster. But here's him at right tackle, and people are making fun of me saying, dude, you didn't have to put an arrow into this guy. He's his own freaking zip code. But at 6'8", 387 pounds, he was 384 at the NFL Combine. Yeah, I think he can play a right tackle. Excuse me. Is he the perfect fit for what you want to try to do? Maybe not. Can he drop some weight and play at a svelte 360 pounds? Yeah. I don't know. If you really want him, I don't know that you're going to be able to wait until 64. I know damn sure you're not going to be able to wait that for Trevor Penning. I've seen Trevor Penning mocked as high as 6. So it will cost you to try and move up for him. But there's other options that are going to be available. But as far as prioritizing, I love it when guys are so big it looks like their helmets are painted on their head. Like they're not really like an extension coming off. It just looks like it's part of his head. It's just helmet paint. That's how big this guy is. And, I like number 6 here just bailing. He said, no way. No, thank you.
Out.
Not taking
business decision.
Yeah, for sure. But I'm a fan. Is he a perfect fit? No. But that's why you're talking about getting him in the second round. If he was a perfect fit, you'd be talking about no way. He's going to go too soon.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't really matter who they get. I would like him to be a target in the second round if he's available, but they got to make that priority number 1. And I saw a comment from Dante. Maybe they signed Dennis Kelly, former Titans right tackle. He's still hanging around. They just can't go into the season, Scott, with either Calvin Anderson or Tom Compton, who they just signed, on the right side protecting Russell Wilson. They have to fortify the trenches. They shouldn't be done yet, and I have a feeling they aren't done yet. Peyton has something up his sleeve. They have a lot of cap room now. In the last couple of days, we haven't gotten to talk about it, but Tim Patrick and Cortland Sutton both restructured their contracts less than a year after signing them. So boss move by George Payton doing that, clear $12.5 million. You got to figure something's up there. They need a cornerback or 2 and a right tackle for sure. So we'll see.
You don't do that unless you've got something planned. Otherwise, you hold that for when you need it. Next year when something comes up, then we've got that restructure. We've got that ace in the hole available if we need to. You don't just clear cap room for the sake of clearing cap room, because usually to do that, you got to come out of pocket. We've talked about when is it important to have ownership. It's important to have ownership so you need to restructure somebody's contract and turn a salary into a signing bonus and pay them out $5-10 million right away. So yeah, I'm with you on that one. I think something is definitely up. Right tackle, that's the big money, the last real big money move left, right? I mean, slot corner, but you can get those guys for relative bargains, so to speak. Dante, I want Tyron Mateo. I call him Matthew or Matthews all the time. That's why we just say the honey badger.
Yeah, I saw Barry in here, by the way. I'm not going to say your name. I'm not going to give you the satisfaction of saying it out loud, but I saw Barry and M in here, so I appreciate you tuning in, Barry, if that's the real Barry. You're not getting Tyron Matthew. They don't need an older, kind of over-the-hill safety in Matthew. They need a young guy opposite Justin Simmons. They are just fine as far as I'm concerned with Caden Stearns, and they also might bring back Kareem Jackson on a 1-year deal. So I don't think Matthew's coming to Denver.
Yeah, you look at him and that's one of the phrases I see all the time, and I listen to y'all do it. It made me pull what Hara had left out here, say, oh, Teddy Bridgewater is asking for $20 million. So what? It doesn't, that's his agent's job. That doesn't mean he's going to get it. And someone asks, what is Honey Badger looking for? What's he going to ask for? Who cares? What can he get? What is he going to be worth? That's the question. Now he was, let's see, 3 years, 42 million, call it 14 a piece average. No. 30 years old, maybe half that. Do you think about bringing him in if you go 7 to 8? Maybe I'm interested. But I could think other ways. I'd still rather take an extra 5 and pour it into the right tackle position.
Exactly. Yeah, I'm not wasting money on safety. That's a luxury signing, Tyron Mateo. They need a right tackle. They need a slot cornerback. And Jay Stylos, however you pronounce your name, Jay, we appreciate you. What corner is left in free agency that can help out the Broncos? I've heard rumblings that Broncos players are following Stephon Gilmore on social media. He's still available, former Panther, former Patriot. He's more of a boundary corner, though. The Broncos need a slot guy. They are also looking to bring back Bryce Callahan. George Payton confirmed that, and also along with him, Kareem Jackson. So they're going to get at least one, and even Payton said one, maybe two. It confirmed he's making some of these moves based around what teams in the AFC West are doing. And what did the Raiders just do? Bring in Devontae Adams. You got to have the cornerbacks to go up against him. Maybe Stephon Gilmore, but Bryce Callahan looks like it could happen.
Well, typically your more athletic guys are on the outside, okay? And that goes for just about everything in football. So when you're not quite good enough for tackle, you slide inside and play guard. If you're not quite the guard, maybe you're smart enough to play center. If you're not good enough for an outside receiver, you come inside and play slot. So if he's been this guy on the outside for most of his career, and you say he's a boundary corner, that's okay. When you're not quick enough to play guard, to play corner anymore, they move you up and they play safety, or they bring you in as a nickel guy. So I think that would still be a decent fit for him. I wouldn't be too worried about where he's been most of his career. I just wonder, what can he be? And I think he could be a good slot starter, or we get back to the point of, let's move Patrick Surtain wherever. Let him be your X factor again on defense. And because that was kind of what we talked about at the beginning last year. And then all of a sudden injuries came in, and okay, we've got to use him outside. But he would give you plenty of options. That's for sure. Michaela coming in with a very generous super chat.
Thank you, Michaela.
So I have a feeling we picked too late to get a great right tackle. What do you think?
I mean, it's without knowing the board, I'm not going to say it's too late or they're not going to get a guy or a great right tackle. I mean, what is great? It's all subjective. They just need fresh blood. They need some warm body to compete with who they have. They brought back Calvin. That's great. They brought in Tom Compton. That's great. You have to have a third guy who can push them and may the best man win. I don't know if they might trade up if they believe that our tackle could go higher than 64. That's a possibility. I don't know, after trading for Russell Wilson, that Peyton wants to give up more picks and not just let the board fall to him a little bit, but they just need a guy there. And you can find great players beyond the first or mid-second round. I mean, there's a 7-round draft for a reason. There's undrafted free agency. As long as you trust your scouts, they're going to find a good right tackle.
Last year, I was on the Spencer Brown bullpit horn, whatever you want to call it. Spencer Brown. And he fell almost to 100. To 100.
Exactly.
And he started the last 3 quarters of the year for the Buffalo Bills, and he was damned good. The guy, I'm not quite, I thought Spencer Brown should have been a top 15 pick. I'm not like that with Abraham Lucas, but I look at Washington State's Abraham Lucas, 6'8", about 330, and ran, I think, a 4.9. I've got it in front of me. Why don't I just look it up instead of sitting here saying, I think. Abraham Lucas, he was 6'6", 315, and ran a 4.9 too, with a 27-inch vertical, 7.25 L cone, and a 4.4 shuttle. The man's athletic. That's somebody that if he's there, you take him. Done. For me. If he's there, you take him. If you're starting to get a little squeamish about it, maybe you trade up a few spots. He's sitting there at 50. Okay, let me throw a 4th-round pick in here and let me move up to 50 and grab him. Just to be sure, because I think he can be one of those guys at right tackle. Not quite the freak of nature Spencer Brown was, but he's a little bit bigger as far as weight, as mass goes, because Spencer Brown was 315 at 6'8". But I think he's a little bit more solid. And I don't think they shouldn't have made that mistake last year. I can't believe they'll make it again. And Abraham Lucas can be a really good player for you in the 2nd round.
I think Lucas is a good scheme fit for what Nathaniel Hackett wants to do with the West Coast system. But we got Jason Mayfield hopping in, hopefully no relation to Baker Mayfield, the soon-to-be former Browns quarterback. $5 super up there in Canada. We appreciate you, Jason. Thank you so much. Hope you're having a great evening. And also, Steve, thank you for the stars, sir.
Yep, thank you for the stars. And Gary Leeds Palmer, I'm clicking on my Facebook page like it's about this show over here. So let me see if I can find them. That's the problem. You're talking about wanting 2 screens. You can get confused really easily when you're looking at 2 screens. Gary came in with a bunch of stars right here that I would do this in the background. Big stars from
Thank
Gary.
you, Gary.
Make sure. So, Zach, that was a mic drop moment. Which one? You're going to have to help us out. Zack has so many of them that
I didn't want to say it.
I want to like zoom into the individual so I can let's spotlight Zack.
I'm assuming it was the Falalele little theme song I had for him. I don't know though, but we appreciate you, Gary, regardless. But Scott, let's get into the meat while we wait for some comments to pile in this evening. Let's get to the meat of the podcast. We are going to break down the Broncos position by position, the depth charts after the first wave of free agency. We have a little over a month until the draft. Where do the Broncos stand right now? Let's start at quarterback. The conversation starts and ends with Russell Wilson. The Broncos, for the first time since Peyton Manning, have a bona fide franchise quarterback. They are legit again at that position. The only question is behind him. And they made an interesting signing the other day. We haven't gotten a chance to talk about it yet. That's Josh Johnson, who's played for now 14 teams in the NFL. He is the definition of a journeyman. He played for Baltimore and the Jets last year, held his own fairly well. But like you said, Scott, and I want you to kind of give me your theory as to why. Why Josh Johnson?
Yeah, we said last week, when guys come in, they like to bring in a veteran that isn't ever going to play, but he's there to help be a coach in the room, a peer coach, so to speak. So, a Crash Davis, except Crash Davis could actually hit the baseball for you Bull Durham fans. And Zach, if you haven't seen Bull Durham, go watch Bull Durham. So you're bringing somebody in there to help implement the new system, the new language, all this. That was the guy I was expected to come in. So when I see Josh Johnson come in at 35 years old and he's played for a bunch of teams, I'm like, okay, where's the connection? This is the guy. All right, maybe it's not maybe he doesn't have that in his background. However, Zach, that's why he's here. He's not here to play. He's not here to play games. He's only started, I think you mentioned that he's played for all 32 teams in the NFL and a couple of expansion teams in the CFL. He started 9 games in his career. If I'm even looking at the right guy, he's been around so much. He's only started 9 games in his career so far. So he's not here to play. He's here to help Nathaniel Hackett and Outten. Maybe there's a connection there that I don't know about. Implement the system and teach everybody else so that everybody knows everybody else's job. So if one man goes down, the next guy knows, I can fill in over here. Tim Patrick, you can switch sides. Cortland, you can play here. Jerry Jeudy outside. Russ, these are your guys. That's why he's there.
Yeah, I'm not too surprised about the actual signing. I mean, if like a Jacoby Brissett, you sign him for the same reason. He's just a placeholder, veteran number 2 that if there's an emergency, you can break the glass and feel semi-comfortable with him. My question was, after tendering Brett Rippon, does this mean that Rippon's the distinct number 3? Is he on his way out? Are they fighting for that number 2 spot? And also, because they signed a quarterback after tendering Rippon, does this mean the Broncos won't take a quarterback in the upcoming draft? I thought someone like Ellerbe in the later rounds, or maybe as a UDFA could help out the Broncos. They would have Russ, they'd have Brett Rippon, who's a veteran now. He came in the league in 2019, and you have a young guy to develop in Ellerbe. So the Johnson signing threw me for a loop in that regard.
Yeah, I feel like you've got that guy with Rippon, like you're saying. So it does. I don't know. It doesn't throw you for a loop is a good way to put it, because I'm not speechless, because I'm rarely speechless. But it doesn't make a ton of sense on the surface. He's not being here to compete. He's not your guy. You mentioned Jacoby Brissett. Well, Jacoby Brissett started like 40 games in his career. He's been a starter in this league. He is, this is my emergency guy who we're going to hope we can win some games with. I mean, Josh Rosen could be that guy for goodness sakes.
Chase Daniel is a more appropriate example,
this is a lot closer to what you have in Brett Rippon. Okay, this is going to be a future quarterbacks coach and maybe an offensive coordinator and head coach in 10 years. So that one's a little strange. And so it makes me think that they may not be done completely. You may want to stash a guy on the practice squad until you have to bring him up as well. So I wouldn't be totally shocked if there was someone with, I know this guy's experienced, but he's not an experienced player, so to speak. So again, it's Russ or nothing.
Yeah,
right now it's Russell Wilson or punt.
Yeah. I was going to say, if Josh Johnson enters the game, it's because your season's over and Russell Wilson's hurt, if you're not blowing out a team. But appreciate you, Mike, for the comment. Great show tonight, guys. Keep up the great work. #DB for life and MHH, Andrew Baker. what's going to ring better, let Russ cook or let's ride? I mean, let's ride right now is everyone's saying that. I think let Russ cook is a Seattle thing. I think let's ride is the Broncos thing. So let's go for let's ride, guys. Let's make that a thing.
I don't know. Let Russ cook sounds like, okay, well, what are we having? You know, we're having Chiefs and Chargers. That's what we're having for dinner.
Yes, sir.
Raiders. But, you know, I like of course, as a motorcycle guy, I like the let's ride a little bit better as well. And rather than someone who just had Golden Grams for dinner for like the 6th out of 7th night in a row. I'm more interested in the riding personally. Thank you, Andrew.
I think let George cook, as in George Payton, is a better expression.
There's the chef.
We're going to pivot to the running back position, Scott. Obviously, the Broncos are set with Javonte as the number one guy. Interestingly, they haven't brought back Melvin Gordon, who's toiling away still on the open market. I think the longer he remains a free agent, the better the possibility he comes back to Denver on a low money, short-term deal. But maybe they want to make Javonte the RB1, not have a 1A and 1B. They want to have a 1 and 2. Still have Mike Boone. I mean, they can add to that position in the draft, but I think it's becoming clear that Javonte is in for a big season.
Yeah, and Bryant, thank you for the stars. It feels like a new name to me. I try and keep up with most of the names, and if you're new, welcome, and if you're not new, I apologize for not recognizing your name sooner. But thank you for the stars, my friend. That's a big help. And I think Javonte is number one. Period. If you're coming back, you're not being overwhelmed with a bunch of big money offers that we know of. And if he comes back. Again, you're not talking about a 50-50 split. You're talking about a 60-40 at worst. And more importantly, you're talking about all of the important carries going to Mr. Williams, you know, the fourth quarter ones, those type. You know, we are down towards the goal line. Hey, thanks for the help, Melvin. Now we're down inside the red zone. Let's get Javonte back in the game. But it's more of when you're taking the touches. Because, again, I don't necessarily want him to get 30 touches, but if he gets 20 a game, I'm going to be pretty happy. I don't want him to get 30 and then say, okay, you know, he's done in 3 years. You know, if you can make him a Bronco for a long time, I think that is a good thing. And I think Melvin Gordon is definitely good enough. And again, most of the people that had problems with Melvin, well, the fumbles is one thing, but 2 is a contract. You know, at $8 million, you don't want him back at $8 million, but at 4, maybe. And one of the questions I always had when Nick and I would get into this, because he'd complain about his contract. I'm like, did Melvin Gordon stop you from signing anybody else? If he didn't, then don't worry about the money. If he's saying, well, we can't get this guy because we're paying Melvin Gordon 8, then you got a problem. But I still don't think it's going to, you know, going back to Tyron Mateo, I don't want to put 8 into a safety if it means I don't get the right tackle I want. And right now we still have needs on our shopping list. Until I got the right tackle I want, I don't want to spend money on Melvin Gordon.
Yeah, I'm a Mike Boone truther. I love to see Mike Boone get a bigger role in this offense. But I just think regardless, I mentioned this on the last podcast, you bring in 2 big road grading offensive linemen whose specialty is blocking. You bring in a blocking tight end and also a franchise quarterback who thrives off play action. If they make Javonte the number 1 and don't have him split carries, he's in for a 1,200-yard season, maybe Pro Bowl. I just think everyone's talking about Jerry Jeudy and the receiving weapons, Cortland Sutton, this and that. No one's talking about the running game with Javonte and how much he's going to benefit as well from Russell Wilson's presence.
Isn't that great? I mean, he may be over. He could arguably be your best player on offense.
Yeah, that's true.
Arguably. I mean, right now it's like, okay, he hasn't proven it. Yeah, I get that. I know. But last year, who was your best player on offense? Javonte Williams. He was. Now you got Russell Wilson coming in. So, you know, a 9-time Pro Bowler, I'm going to give that guy the hat tip. But Javonte Williams, and again, if, you know, to get to 1,200, you know, as far as RB1, it doesn't even really need to be the guy. If I just take that slider from 50-50 and slide it over to like 60-40 carries where he's getting 60% of the touches instead of half of them, he's a 1,200-yard running back.
Yeah. Well, speaking of the receivers, let's get to them because not a lot to say here. Obviously, they have, I think, one of the best receiving cores in the NFL. No one really disputes that. I think Jerry Jeudy's in for a breakout season, but Mr. Dependables, plural, when you have Tim Patrick and Cortland Sutton, it's going to help out Russ tremendously, help out the passing offense. Beneath the big three, though, I mean, that's where it gets maybe a little murkier. You have KJ Hamler hopefully coming back to full health. They would like maybe a younger number 5 to step up, but this is on paper, Scott, maybe the Broncos' best positional group in terms of depth, and I can't wait to see what they can do.
I think that's a fair statement. When you start looking at the numbers last year, there were decent numbers in there, despite the fact the erratic at best quarterback play, inadequate quarterback play through the course of the year. Again, for the talk of, well, Noah Fant wasn't being used. Noah Fant was being used. He just wasn't being used correctly. He set a career high in catches,
right?
But they were mostly stop routes, turn around and catch the ball and then have to get that, that momentum going again. I got a 250-pound guy that runs a 4.4. I don't want him slowing down. I want to hit the ball to him while he's running and let somebody see if anybody in that secondary is brave enough to get in front of him when he does it. We know the quarterback play is an upgrade. We know that's not a question mark anymore. Every talk we had going into the season was always if the quarterback play elevates. And it did from 2020 to 2021. Statistically across the board, the quarterback play got better, but it wasn't good. It was mediocre at best to below average to bad at worst. But 2020 was god-awful. So you went in the right direction, but it still wasn't good. Now you got good, maybe great coming in.
Yeah.
And the receivers are going to get to show off. And you mentioned what a masterstroke it was. And again, one of those pull my hair out moments was when you were talking about paying these receivers. We just gave them big extensions and they're not being used. I'm like, dude, the raises kick in next year. What this tells me is George Payton has his quarterback or promised him a quarterback. And these two guys, it's not going to be them because he talked them into and he locked up his receivers on faith. And he delivered. You know what kind of sway he has in the locker room now when he's talking to free agents or potential trades? It's like, why don't you go talk to Cortland and Tim and ask what I promised them what we do. And we got him Russell Wilson.
I want to give Cortland and Tim Patrick a lot of credit for being willing to restructure before even a year is up on their contract. Big team players, selfless moments there. So tip of the cap to them. Real quick before we get into tight ends, Chris McDaniel's asking, is Cortland what he was 2 years ago? No concern. I really don't have any concern. It takes a player about a season to get over or reacclimated after a major knee injury. So he should be 100% now, not thinking about it at all. And Cortland was putting up borderline top 10 receiving numbers with the likes of, I mean, you guys know his quarterbacks. Now he has Russell Wilson throwing to him, other players around him drawing coverage away. Cortland's in for a big season, not unlike DK Metcalf, what he was in Seattle. That would be Cortland Sutton to Russell Wilson. No concern.
The only reason I'm going to bring this up is because it is so far off what happened to him, but it's still applicable. And what I mean by this is I got a decent bicycle wreck once. I went over my handlebars and landed on my head. Had my helmet on, I was okay, scratched up my face. No structural damage like you had with a knee. The first time I went to get back on my bike, I got faint. I broke out in a sweat and I almost fell down. It was like my brain said, hey, dumbass, do you remember what happened last time you got on this thing? Just completely subconsciously. So this is with the structural damage to a knee and a receiver, a skill guy, who relies on quick cuts, it's typically a full 18 months before they are 100%. And a big part of that is overcoming your brain telling you, hey, dumbass, you tore up your knee last time you were doing something like this and you were on crutches for a while. So learning to trust that knee and do all those things. He did that last year and still came away with almost 800 yards on close to 60 catches with erratic, at best, quarterback play. At best, he's going to be in for a good season. Is he going to be what he was 2 years ago? I think he will be this year. 26 years old. He's going to be just fine.
And I was going to say he emerged from last season without further damage to the knee, so he's all systems are going for Cortland Sutton.
And his brain works with you now. You're like, okay, you'll be okay. You can go do this.
There's a psychosomatic element to it for sure. Mile High Mike chiming in. Alberto would be good. We're going to get to tight ends right now. That's a good segue. Alberto, I have a story coming to milehighhuddle.com about Alberto. George Payton said the Broncos are very I think either really high or very high on Alberto. That's why, in part, they made the trade that included Noah Fant for Russell Wilson. Alberto is locked in. He's the tight end one. They consider him a mismatch. They can move him around the formation. They said he has to get better with his blocking for sure. I agree with that. His hands have to be a little more reliable, but if he reaches his potential, you have another receiving nightmare in the middle of the field, a safety blanket for Russell Wilson. It's underneath Alberto that the Broncos don't have much right now. They don't. They brought back Andrew Beck as the fullback tight end guy. They brought in Eric Tomlinson as a blocking guy, but they don't have that number two. They don't have that. Hate to make the analogy. They don't have the Aaron Hernandez to the Rob Gronkowski, and I think you might get that guy in the draft.
Well, that might be a stretch either way. For Alberto or whoever they were to bring in, those two guys were pretty special.
Right.
And you don't need special out of Alberto to be really good. And he can be really good. And, I was thinking just, maybe Austin Hooper, maybe Hayden Hurst, some guys that I think that are former Falcons, Cleveland Browns guys that are good pass catching tight ends that might be available. But I also see a tight end maybe in the draft with one of these big picks. Trey McBride right there at Colorado State. If he's at 64 and you don't like the right tackle available, or you haven't addressed that position yet, could you go that direction? Yeah, you could, because you could get a top 3 tight end in the draft with one of these middle round picks. You're not going to do that at right tackle. So it's like, wait a minute, I can get the best tight end in the draft with a pick I already have and not have to give it anything else. Okay, that might be worth doing. And then I still have to address the right tackle position. But like you said, Zach, you're not restructuring those guys who just signed new contracts unless something's up. Something's up.
I'm making middler a thing from now on. I like that. It rolls off the tongue.
The middler picks.
You can't have Pro Bowlers at every spot, guys. So they have the great receiving weapons that they have. They have Javonte in the backfield. If their tight end one is Alberto, they're still in really good hands. I don't worry about that. They'll add a guy as a backup. I saw Gerald Everett signed with who today? Someone. He got a multi-year deal. I thought he'd be a target for the Broncos because of the Russell Wilson connection, but it wasn't to be. That could be an indication. They haven't spent any money there in free agency. That can be an indication that they're waiting until the draft to add that second guy. Chargers signed Gerald Everett. Thank you, Kathy.
Just jumping back as I'm scrolling down here, just putting a kind of bow on the running back. Jillian says, I like the split running back load because it keeps them fresh, especially in both our every down backs. I do think we can draft a younger running back. If a guy like, and thank you for the comment, appreciate you being here. If they bring in someone like Melvin Gordon, does that make Mike Boone expendable? Is he going to be, he was on an awful lot of money for what he did last year. He was on number 2 money and got practice squad reps. And that's the way it's going to be. You shouldn't use more than 2 running backs, really. So, what happens with him? If Gordon comes in, is Mike Boone on this roster next year?
Well, Gordon doesn't play special teams, and I feel like that's where Mike Boone would help out under the new
$2 or $3 million.
I'm a truther. I want the Broncos to unleash Mike Boone. The limited carries that he had, he looked really good. So I think they'll draft another guy there. And if you have a threesome of Javonte, Mike Boone, and a rookie running back, you're just fine there. I think Javonte is going to be a durable player for the Broncos.
Yeah, again, it doesn't make a lot of sense for me unless you think for Melvin Gordon, unless it's like, okay, this is a missing piece that can just make us the fractionally better that we need to go over the top, to be that guy. And I think you're probably going to have some time with him, with the running back. Some of these guys don't sign until like a couple of weeks before camp because they're waiting for the best move. Right. And it doesn't really show up. So you say, okay, here's 1 year, $5 million. Non-guaranteed, doesn't work out, I'm going to cut you after a couple of weeks. NFL's just brutal.
It is, yeah. We're going to get to offensive line because we have a lot to talk about there, and we're about halfway through the podcast. So, Scott, left tackle, the Broncos are good. They have Garrett Bowles. Hopefully he succeeds under Butch Berry, the new OL coach. You don't have to worry too much there. You have Calvin Anderson as the backup to him as it is right now. Left guard, Dalton Reissner. I still feel like he might be upgradable, but maybe a better fit for the West Coast scheme. Center is either Cushenberry or Glasgow or a rookie. I don't know what the Broncos are going to do there. Right guard, that's pretty penciled in too with Quinn Miners. He looked really good as a rookie, and I think he's the future. and right tackle. That's the question mark. That's who is it going to be? It cannot be Calvin Anderson. It cannot be Tom Compton, who they signed. It cannot be some random no-name, former undrafted. It has to be a special talent, whether that's a veteran on the trade market or Dennis Kelly, who they can pluck off the scrap heap right now, or a high-prized rookie. I mean, you mentioned Lucas. That's one name. Penning's another name. They just got to make sure they can do the best possible protection for Russell Wilson. And they should take a page out of what the Bengals did. They brought in Lyle Collins, who the Broncos had no interest in, by the way, according to Mike Liss. That was a little interesting. That would have been a huge upgrade, but the Bengals did not let him get away because they realized protecting Joe Burrow is the most important thing. And I respect Cincinnati for that. I hope George Paton follows a similar model.
For all of their run, in the playoffs, well, we saw what their undoing was in the playoffs, but for all of that run, they were still a 10-7 team that was fighting for their lives at the end to just get into the playoffs. And part of that was because of how bad their offensive line was. So people kind of forget the big picture, that they weren't a great football team. They were a good football team that got hot. And sometimes that's all it takes. But what happens if you don't even make the playoffs because you've got such a liability, or worse, you get your quarterback killed because your offensive line is so bad. So, Zach, last year, I think about the only criticism I had, and I try not to do this too much without having more information, but it felt to me like with the salary cap available, and I know you had Jawan James, at least that was the thought process, but it just felt like the Broncos could have swung bigger at right tackle last year. That's what it felt like to me.
That's been the motto out of my mouth the last 5 years. They just keep plugging Band-Aids at that position, and as they learned at quarterback, it's never going to work. They haven't invested premium draft picks in right tackle. They haven't gotten anyone dependable on a different level. That's why Lyle Collins, who's first entering his prime right now with experience, he just would have been a monster upgrade. They have to make it a priority, and I think George Paton will, whether it's trading capital for a veteran or capital to move up in the draft and land his player. They cannot go into the season with, again, Calvin or Tom Compton. Real quick about the guard, from what I've gathered, they're going to make it, I think, at least one open competition with Dalton Reissner's spot, but they have Ben Braden, the former Green Bay lineman who they brought in, Tom Compton, who has experience at guard, Netani Muti, Reissner, and Miners for that matter. All of them are going to be competing, and may the best two win for at least one spot at left guard.
And you mentioned what's interesting is a couple of those guys could be fighting for more than one spot, depending on how it goes. Now, you mentioned the center position. Reissner was thought of as a center when he was drafted. He played at the Senior Bowl. He played all three positions. So that was part of his appeal, was that he had that versatility. Started as center. Okay, this is too much for a kid from Wisconsin, from UW. Or I think that's where he was from. Wasn't he from Whitewater, Wisconsin Whitewater? Mm-hmm. It's been a while. I'm already on to the next class. That this was too much for him. Let's teach him how to play grown-up football and get the techniques and stuff right. But is that completely out of the question? And I know that Glasgow has some in his past as well. That could your upgrade at center be internal?
There's a reason they brought him back. That's one of the first moves they made this offseason, was restructuring Glasgow so he can come back to either be the guard or the center. And Cushenberry, depending on how they feel about him, could be on the way out. Glasgow could fit him better considering his style of play, his injury history. I think he was a better center in Detroit than he was a guard, so that can be a natural in-house replacement. Regardless, though, the Broncos have to come out of the draft and, preferably free agency with at least 2 or 3 more guys. They have to keep that cupboard stacked.
Yeah, there was, again, the phrase that we used a lot when there were problems besides, effort and attitude and uninspired and all those type of things was bullied. This team got bullied in the trenches on both sides. And we talk a little bit about the defense here in a moment. That's been addressed on defense in a few spots. Now let's see if we can do the same thing. And David Kilgore coming in with a super. Appreciate you, David.
Thank you,
David. Says, do you guys see us going after J.C. Treader then for center? Zach?
I haven't heard an inkling about the Broncos' interest in a free agent center, veteran center. I really do think that guy could be Glasgow, and Cushenberry could be the odd man out of that rotation. Maybe as a backup, he can stick around. I haven't heard anything about Treader. They weren't in on Ryan Jensen at all, who re-signed. I mean, that was obvious. He'd be back with the Bucs after Brady came back, but I haven't heard anything, and it seems like it's either going to be Glasgow or a rookie going into the next season.
Yeah, I appreciate you, David. I think, with all the talk right now, the focus is on right tackle. We spent most of the time on that position. But yeah, you're going to need some folks coming in at center, at the interior line position, through depth and free agency. I mean, I'm through the draft and free agency in order to promote competition in there, because it wasn't good. The play on the interior line wasn't good last year. Appreciate you. And let's flip over. I'm gonna.
There's no way that was the real last name, Kathy. I'm sorry. I'm not going to try to pronounce that because I feel like you're trolling me. But I do agree with your comment here about Christian Barry. I just wanted to point that out. I thought my eyes were deceiving me, then I saw it pop up again. But where were we, Scott? Defensive line.
I like Schmitty diddle.
Okay, Andrew Baker.
We always appreciate Kathy coming in as well.
Yeah.
She's a regular and a contributor. Appreciate it, Kathy. I thought this question from Andrew, who came in with some stars a few minutes ago, might be a good way to kick us off on the defensive side of the ball and at edge. So with hopefully being able to play with a lead instead of there's a phrase that I taught Nick that he's using all the time now. In soccer, basically, you just try and not get scored on and play for penalties or maybe get a lucky goal. You call it suffer ball, and it's just awful to watch. I'm like, the Broncos played suffer ball last year. They're like, we don't really want to score. We can't score. We don't really want you to score. Let's just see if we can squeeze the life out of the game, and maybe we'll get lucky in the fourth quarter. It was awful. So with hopefully being able to play with a lead and a defense having their ears pinned back, does Chubb finally produce like we thought he could?
The Broncos have been playing suffer ball since 2016, but that's neither here nor there. Bradley Chubb, it all depends if he can stay healthy or not. That's been the rap on him. When he's healthy and on the field, he's a pretty productive player. I don't know about worthy of being the 5th overall pick and passing on Josh Allen. That's a whole other argument, but he's been pretty good. He looked like the long-term fixture opposite Von Miller. They never really got a chance to play together, which was a shame. I just hope he stays healthy. He's on his 5th-year option. He should be super motivated. He should be super inspired, not just for his next contract, but to be playing in a more active defense under a coordinator in Gerald Everett, nailed it, who's going to use Chubb to the best of his abilities and playing opposite Randy Gregory, who I think was a tremendous signing and is going to help out the entire pass rush as well.
No one has more incentive than Bradley Chubb. You're in a contract year, a free agent year, and this could be, if he goes out and lays a stinker, let's say Dante Fowler's it out there, it's going to cost him $50 million. He's got 50 million reasons to go out there and produce. If he can't, he's done. If he can't go out there and produce, then he's washed. He's officially, we're going to use the B word on him, because that will be 3 years. He hasn't been able to stay healthy and get it done. So this is it. This is it. And he's got more reason than anybody in the world to go out there and show what he can do. Have at it, big man. Get it done. We're rooting for you. And so is your agent.
Crap or get off the pot, Bradley. That's pretty much what his motto should be. We'll stick with edge, then we'll hop to defensive line because we kind of skipped that position. They're good with Bradley Chubb.
I can work my way across left to right.
On paper, they're good with Bradley Chubb and Randy Gregory. They have Jonathan Cooper behind them, who's, I think, an excellent number 3. They tendered Malik Reed. He might be signed by another team. The Broncos would get no compensation if he walks, but they tendered him. So your 4 on paper are set. When Malik Reed and Cooper are your backups, that's an excellent position. When they're your starters, that's a tough position to be in. But that's why the Randy Gregory signing was so big. That's why hopefully Bradley Chubb staying healthy is so big. On paper, that's a pretty menacing pass rush.
Yeah, it is. Going back to what it finished last year, on paper to start the season, you're thinking Von Miller and Bradley Chubb, and that didn't happen. And then it turned into Malik Reed and Jonathan Cooper. And you saw flashes from Jonathan Cooper, but Jonathan Cooper was more of the, oh my God, this is a 7th round pick and he's decent.
Right.
Those are the kind of hopes. It's relative to expectations. If Bradley Chubb played like Jonathan Cooper, you'd say, okay, this guy's washed. We got to get rid of him. Right. So it's that's part of it. Now, what you've got out of Jonathan Cooper, you're excited about, but that's not what you're going into, into the season banking on a starter. That's why you got Randy Gregory, because you look at what he can do, and it's a whole different level. Bradley Chubb and a healthy, motivated. Do you think Randy Gregory would be a little motivated right now? You think he's got anything to prove?
Just a little bit.
And Chris, thank you for the super sticker. Sometimes that people do this and then they kind of put their comment in later because it hit premature sticulation or something like that getting out there, or starsdulation. So I'm going to go ahead and show this one just in case you wanted to attach this one, Chris. So winner of the West will have the best depth and coaching. Glad you guys are covering this. Thanks.
Thank you, Chris.
Appreciate you being here, Chris. Thank you. And welcome to the show. Best depth and coaching. Coaching. Do you put question marks after that one?
It eliminates the Raiders for me because of Josh.
I was waiting. I was like, let me just tee this up for Zack here. Here's a slow pitch. Let me just tee this one up for you.
Honestly, Brandon Staley is also very questionable. I think he tries to outsmart himself a lot of the time, so he has a lot to prove. And Andy Reid is Andy Reid. Until someone unseats the Chiefs, they're going to have the best coaching, the best depth. I mean, every team in the West is stacked at certain spots. It's more along the lines of who has the best injury luck. What team stays intact and healthy throughout the entire year, that's going to be the team that wins the West. But until Kansas City is challenged and beaten, we have to still recognize them probably as the team to beat, as the best in the West.
Well, and sorry, I heard some yelling coming from upstairs, and I lost my train of thought while I was looking at this Twitch comment. So, I'm just going to go ahead and hit this one real quick. Ral Blitz coming in from Twitch saying, what if we end up with Dwayne Brown? And there's one of your tackle guys. Dwayne's so old that I covered him. He was in my first class in 2002. And I remember him out of Virginia. He had like size 18 shoes or something. And he was coming out as a tight end defensive end. And you see what happens to guys with size 18 shoes that are tight ends in high school. They become great offensive tackles. And he really did. And yes, that would not be a bad one-year option while you sort out the right tackle position long-term over the next 12 months.
I mean, you can sign Dwayne Brown, you can sign Dennis Kelly or Marcus Cannon or David Quisenberry. All these guys are in the same tier. Dwayne Brown, I think, is pretty old as well, so he would be to get by on for 1 year. I would rather bring back Bobby Massey. It's not going to stop me regardless, though, of drafting a tackle and keeping a young guy in the works to hopefully take over, not just for 1 year on a year-to-year annual basis, but for 5, 7, 10 years, be a fixture at right tackle to pair with Garrett Bowles. So again, whether it's a veteran, they got to still look in the draft for that next guy.
G Hill coming in and saying, very generous super, seeing that orange.
Thank you, G.
Said, do you think we're done with free agency? Okay. Now, Zack, we're talking about the restructures. And they're freeing up money. Obviously, something's coming. What if it's just for a Russell Wilson extension, and it's not for a nice free agent? Is it possible that you eat up that extra money with a $40 million contract for Russ, and you're kind of done in free agency?
Well, the thing, if they restructure Russ to actually give them cap space because they can spread out the cap hits over the course of the deal, depending on how they structure it, they're not done. But in terms of making like super big major splash moves, I think that might be concluded until the draft. They're going to maybe bring back Bryce Callahan, Kareem Jackson. I saw they had a visit set up with a safety. I think it was Josh Reed. So they're in the second tier, the third tier of the bargain bin now. Maybe they spring for someone like Stephon Gilmore, but maybe also the big splash moves are over. And don't forget, they need some money in the kitty for the undrafted class, the rookie class, rainy day funds. You can't have your cap that low. You have to keep some in it as well. So they'll make a couple moves, but if you're looking for the next blockbuster trade, I wouldn't hold your breath.
And all of this talk about, what you just said, Zack, the rainy day fund was the one I had ring in my head right when you said it. Think of the moves that were made in season by Peyton that were just good. The linebacker position that they were filling in, bringing those guys in mid-season were spectacular. I mean, they hardly missed a beat. So, having that flexibility to go and drop $1 million on somebody instead of a veteran's free agent that doesn't count against the cap kind of thing is, you want to have some of that in reserve for sure. But Mr. Hill, Miss Hill, do I think they're done? No, I do not. I do not think the Broncos are done in free agency.
I would look for the next move to be bringing back one of their own. I hope it's Bryce Callahan, because when he's healthy, that guy is an all-pro talent. Maybe Kareem Jackson as well at safety. But pivoting back real quick to the edge position and the pass rush, Jason Mayfield hopping in, $5 super. Thank you, Jason. Just wondering, who do y'all think will be the Broncos sacks leader this year? I mean, you pay Randy Gregory $70 million. I hope he leads your team in sacks. And just with a full season, hopefully fully healthy, I feel like he can be a 12, 13, maybe even 15 sack guy. And the beauty of that is at least 3 to 5 of those will be sack fumbles, turnovers, game-changing plays. I think Gregory is your guy.
I'm going to go with Gregory as well. I mean, he's just the most gifted of the bunch. You want to say, I want it to be Bradley Chubb as long as it's 15 or more. Because, if you've got the leader of your team, it's like, oh, yeah, it's a big surprise. It's Bradley Chubb. Great. He had 5. Crap. That means we didn't get much of a pass rush from the Denver Broncos and really improve out there. So if you can split 25 to 30 between those guys, my goodness, is it going to be a fun defense to watch between your two edge guys.
Let's get real quick to the defensive line. The Broncos have Mike Purcell coming back, Draymond Jones, who I continue to pound the table as a breakout candidate, and you just signed DJ Jones, the big free agent, big ticket addition, who's going to help out the Broncos run defense tremendously. They might miss Shelby Harris's pass rush from the front three a little bit, but that's why you brought in Randy Gregory. Also, they brought back Deshaun Williams, who I think is a really underrated player on the Denver defensive line. So they're pretty set there. It's not a priority to me in the draft. I would like maybe a little more depth, but your 3-4 guys leading the depth chart are good.
Yeah, I was a big fan of Deshaun. That was my guy. I called him the Broncos preseason player of the year. And when I saw him, I was like, oh, that guy's still good. So I was still happy with him. And David, I think we went after, we talked a little bit, appreciate the super. We talked a little bit about Tyron Matthew, Honey Badger, earlier a little bit. Could we go after him? I don't think so. What would it cost to get him? Probably 8 to 10, maybe a little more. And I don't think you want to put that kind of money into the safety position right now based on what you have and what you could have for a better price. But there will be options there. Appreciate the super for sure. Looking at I like the DJ Jones. I got DJ Williams in my head now. When you get old, the old guys pop into your head first. So DJ Jones. Nick and I went back and forth a lot on, talking Falcons, talking Broncos. Who from the Falcons would start on the Broncos? And I'm like, Grady Jarrett frickin' starts on your team. Don't give me any crap about it. And he's like, oh, he's too short this, not enough length this. I'm like, that's why he went to the 5th and he's a 3-time Pro Bowler. He's just that reason.
Yeah.
DJ Jones is very, very, very similar to him. Undersized, he's 6 foot with a motor, a V8 engine in it with a diesel that will just go all day long. Quick hands, quick burst. What do you want him to do? Do you want him to go after the passer? Okay, well, let's put him in it as a 4-3 defensive tackle in pass rush situations. I love the signing. I really do.
Yeah, we got a question here. It's a good pivot from Brandon Regan. Brandon Reagan? Good last name, though.
Yeah, Brandon's been a lot. I actually wanted to say thank you to Brandon. When I'm doing the leaderboards on YouTube, Brandon's showing up all the time now. So he's been a big supporter recently. And Brandon, we appreciate you for it. Thank you very much.
Brandon asked, could Alex Singleton, the new inside linebacker they signed from the Eagles, former Eagles leading tackler the last 2 seasons, not 1 but 2, as you point out here, beat out Josie Jewell at linebacker? Brandon, based on the contract they gave Josie Jewell, it just came out, 2-year deal, 7 guaranteed. That's starter's money. They envision Josie Jewell starting at one linebacker spot, and they're going to have maybe an open competition. Don't forget, Baron Browning exists, and I feel like he had a solid rookie year when he was healthy, and he can be the future at inside linebacker. Singleton is a run stuffer, a special teams guy. I don't think he's the future there. So you have Baron Browning, you have Jonas Griffith, who they tendered and brought back. He played pretty well last year, and you have Singleton now. I think those 3 guys will compete for one starting spot, with Jewell being locked into the other.
And I mentioned the word bullied before and how that was addressed on the defensive lines with a guy like DJ Jones. You got somebody who will seal your edge. You're getting Chubb back. You just got tougher in the defense. You know what else gets tougher is Alex Singleton makes you tougher against the run. If you put any stock in Pro Football Focus, really good again in run defense, real decent in pass rush, not bad, awful in coverage. Well, guess what? I don't want him covering anybody. I want him in run downs, and I'll have 5 defensive backs on the field with him. So he's going to make your defense tougher. Could he get one of those spots? Yeah, he could. And you've got somebody that's been with you all year instead of trying to, as good as it was, I don't want to be searching other people's practice squads in October for my inside linebackers. I'd like to have that taken care of before OTAs start.
Hopefully Singleton's pec remains intact and not torn like Jewell and Johnson's were last year.
I mean, I know we want to get on the strength and conditioning staff, but what are you doing to cause 2 pectoral injuries? That just sounds freakish to me.
Right. You know who's still out there, though, at inside linebacker? A guy named Bobby Wagner.
Bobby?
It's not going to happen. I mean, obviously, after re-signing Jewell and bringing in Singleton, but it's interesting that he's toiling away on the open market. But we're going to pivot real quick from inside linebacker to cornerback, where the Broncos are pretty good, but they could be better. They're about to get a little better, I think, by re-signing Bryce Callahan to play the slot. Hopefully, God willing, he stays healthy to pair with Ronald Darby and Patrick Surtain on the outside. Beneath them on the depth chart as of March 20th, right this moment, you have Michael Ojemudia, who I think could be in for a decent year, up-and-coming guy, and also a Sang Bassi, who's a backup slot. Between the 4 of them, if I did my math correctly, I think they have a decent – yeah, I'm already – I don't number it all. Between those players that I mentioned, they have a decent nucleus. I think they're going to add – a guy through the draft and a free agent. And I mentioned Bryce Callahan. That's in the works, according to George Payton. They're already negotiating. I'd look for that deal to get done in the not-so-distant future.
Yeah, you're solid at corner. You know, it's nice when you're, the first world problems of saying, well, we don't have a slot corner. Oh, my goodness, you don't have a third cornerback? Most people don't have 1, let alone 2 that you can count on and everything else that you've got. So, yeah, if Bryce did Bryce resign, or is that in the works, or that's something you were just hoping would happen?
Well, they're negotiating. That's what George Payton said, but no signing's been official yet.
Okay, yeah, when he's healthy, and Ojemudia, again, those hamstrings can be scary. Hamstring injuries are like voodoo. You're not sure how bad they are or what's going to happen. Sometimes it's better. It's like, yeah, he broke his ankle. He's out 6 weeks. That makes it nice and easy. Hamstrings can be a little interesting like that. Cornerback, you're fairly set at corner. Let's go into the draft, and I know Isaiah Oliver was out there. He re-signed with the Falcons. Bryce Callahan, but again, I think your best option there. But he was on like $8 million last year. We talk about Melvin Gordon. Was Bryce Callahan an $8 million corner?
When he was healthy, he was, but not when he can't play at all. Then he's just hurting the team because he's not on the field. But yeah, those foot injuries and the knee injuries are definitely cause for concern. You bring him back though on a 1-year, $5 million deal loaded with incentives for additional money. I think that'd be a smart play by George Payton, just to give himself some breathing room going into the draft. That way he's not backed into any corner and has to take a slot cornerback for the sake of taking one. We're going to wrap it up on defense at safety right now. We've talked about it all night, Scott, what the Broncos could do there. They have Simmons, obviously, the all-pro locked into one spot. I don't see them bringing in Tyron Mateo. It's a luxury signing, and he's getting to be over the hill anyway. I'd rather put that money, like Scott said, toward right tackle. And I'm a big Caden Stearns guy, and I was a big Jamar Johnson guy. Between the 2 of them, you have at least one potential long-term staple opposite Simmons. I wouldn't touch this position until the draft.
Well, and I know that y'all kind of got on him a little bit, with KJ, with Kareem Jackson. Let me look at his overall numbers and player grades. If you put any into Pro Football Focus, it was warranted. The PFF numbers say that he wasn't very good, but I tell you what, listening to the talk, Broncos country, just saying, where's the passion on this team? Where's the leadership? Where's the fire? And that guy will run through a brick wall for you. He plays with passion. He plays with fire. Is there a way that you can use that and not have him be a liability in pass coverage? Maybe as a third guy, limit his snaps a little bit, figure out a different way to use him. Let him rush the passer some, use him as blitz packages, let him cover a tight end, some of the smaller tight ends, instead of I don't want him one-on-one chasing a slot receiver around. But I was a big fan of what I thought, it seemed to me anyway, what he brought as far as the leadership, the passion. And he had the flash plays on this team. I said, this team, they always look on offense, they played not to lose. They did the same thing on defense whenever I'd watch somebody come in and look like they were just out to hurt somebody, they are besides himself. When they were out there trying to play old school football and smash heads, I'm like, oh yeah, there's Kareem Jackson again. What's wrong with this guy again? Well, he's a liability in coverage. Oh yeah, well that matters. I like Kareem Jackson. I really do.
He's also old. And when you're old and a liability in coverage as a safety, it's time to maybe go for greener pastures, Scott. I understand the leadership aspect. I love his spark plug attitude and what he's brought to the Denver defense and the tenacity. He's good against the run, but my God, I know you weren't covering Denver back then, but he is late career Darian Stewart. And I don't want late career Darian Stewart opposite Simmons. They can do a lot better.
It's a harsh game. Father Time's going to catch up everybody. He's going to be 34 this year. Oh, fine. But, I don't want the sun to set on his career. I want him to play as long as he wants to, because he's one of the few guys out there to me that look like he still loved playing the game. Like the life hadn't been totally sucked out of his game. And those are the kind of guys I want to play for as long as they want to play. Just maybe not with the Denver Broncos, but so when I see safety, I'm a KJ fan. I am, even if it's not what's best for the Denver Broncos.
I think George Payton agrees with you because he also mentioned, along with Bryce Callahan, he's been negotiating with Kareem Jackson's agents and representatives, and he looks to bring him back more than likely on a 1-year deal. So could be where Bryce and Kareem Jackson return and kind of shore up that secondary heading into the draft. We can get to specialists if you want. I'm going to just
one I care about, and that's punt return.
Yeah, punt return too.
What? Because they should just scrap the kickoffs as far as I'm concerned. I'm sorry, kickoff, touchback. At least they don't go to commercial after every kickoff now. They used to do that. It's like extra point, commercial, kickoff, touchback, commercial. Boom. I'm watching something else at that point. So who's coming in as who's going to be your punt returner?
You can have KJ Hamler back there if he's healthy. I wouldn't mind Mike Boone if his hands prove consistent. Just anyone with speed, a little reliability. And I think anyone. Honestly, I don't think the next punt returner is on the roster yet. I think they're going to use that a draft pick to address that. Just as a guy who can make some yardage after receiving the punt, because Deontay Spencer wasn't doing that. But my thing was punter as well. Sam Martin was good, but he's not. He should be better in the mile-high altitude, and they can actually save $2+ million if they make him a pre or post June 1st release. Maybe they draft what's his name, Matt Arizaria. What's his name? The punter?
Is that Ariza? And then
Azaria
Camargo or somebody. The kid from Georgia is pretty good too. The University of Georgia is pretty good.
I don't advocate spending picks on punters.
I don't spend time. The only punter's name I remember two: Reggie Roby and Ray Guy. That's it.
Yeah, that's true.
Those are legends. After that, they're punters.
If they bring back Sam Martin under Dwayne Stukes, that's fine. But I feel like that's one area. Obviously, they're good with Brandon McManus. They're not going to change that. No one cares about long snappers, so maybe punter is worth monitoring.
So on that note, y'all, I think we're probably going to get out of here. We have a bunch of eyeballs tonight, so we appreciate you taking the time to join us. Zach, do you want to get us moving?
Yeah, I want to say though, people have been pointing out about defensive line real quick. McTelvin Agim.
I had one more point before I forget. I'm sorry, Zach, for interrupting. On punt returner, I don't want a guy who's my biggest question is, can he stay healthy returning punts? So I don't want it to be Hamler.
Sure.
If Hamler, it's like, what's your biggest concern of Hamler? Well, his hamstrings are made out of the same stuff that Julio Jones's hamstrings are made out of. They're made out of stringed glass. I don't want it to be him because I want guys that are indestructible playing special teams.
I appreciate you, Kathy, because I totally butchered Matt's last name, Trevor Areza, I'm assuming, or Ryan Sona. I just want Matt Punter.
It's nice and easy.
Matt, the rookie punter. I don't know why I can't talk tonight, but about defensive line, real quick, people have pointed out, and it's a good observation, guys, about McTelvin Agim, who for whatever reason was like buried in Vic Fangio's doghouse the last couple of years. He has talent on that defensive line. He can maybe turn into the DJ Jones understudy, and if he's good for 5, 10, 15 snaps a game, he can help out.
Where did he finish? The one reason why we forget about him is because he's been forgettable. I have to scroll. Wait, McTelvin Agim, 7 games, tackles, 7 games, 4. He had 4 more tackles last year than Zack and I.
Why was he inactive for 10 games, though? That's my question. I know he battled some injuries, but he just didn't seem like a guy that was meshing with the previous coaching staff. Hopefully, the new staff is a little kinder to me.
It's a clean slate. It's a clean slate. Whatever. So, well, I don't want to hear about last year. If I'm walking in and I'm Evero and I'm Hackett, I'm all those. I don't hear about last year.
Right.
Don't care. Show me. This is your chance. Clean slate.
We got Russell Wilson. Who cares about last year? But that is going to do it, guys, for the Huddle Up podcast. Thank you, Scott, for joining me tonight, filling in for Chad. I look forward to podcasting with you this next week. But follow us on Twitter until we see you guys next, which is tomorrow evening, same time, same place. Follow us on Twitter at Huddle Up Pod. You can follow the main account if my mouse would work, and I think it just died, at Mile High Huddle for all your Broncos news, analysis, rumors, transactions, and more. Go to huddleuppod.com. I got you in a second, Scott. I didn't forget. Go to Huddle Up Pod if you want.
I was going to click on him. I was nodding like you said your mouse died, so I was going to click on him for you. So I went and found him. I
already skipped the Twitter shout-out, so I'll get back to that in a second. If you want a fancy hat like this or any other thing from our store, huddleuppod.com is where it's at. And, guys, please follow my co-host at Scout Kennedy. You can follow myself at Kelberman NFL. Don't forget to go to facebook.com/MileHuddlePod. Like that page, follow that page. And please, guys, if you haven't, go to Apple Podcasts and leave your football priest, yes, Scott too, a 5-star review for a chance to win some swag each and every month. But if you can't do those things, please do these 3 things. Subscribe, like, and share this video and every video you see on the MHH channel. It really helps us grow and reach more Broncos fans just like you. And then, Scott, until you get a Huddle Up Pod mug, you are on probation to get into the...
I'm wearing the colors.
to the covenant.
I'm wearing the colors. They're
one step closer.
Close, right?
Close enough.
So, no, appreciate everybody for being here. Again, it's going to be a fun week. This was almost a recap pod. Tomorrow, we're going to get back into the news and rumors and all that kind of stuff from around the NFL. Zach and I are going to have some fun this week. I hope you all join us.
Yes, sir. Have a great rest of your weekend, Scott. Everyone tuning in, thank you for your support and interaction. Take care. And as always, come on, Scott.
I feel like a fraud.
Come on, or I'll do it for you. Go Broncos.
You've been listening to the Huddle Up Podcast. Join Broncos Country's deep divers at milehighhuddle.com to keep the conversation going.